So welcome everyone. My name is Lizette Tejeda and I am a program manager for Junior Achievement of Southern California. And I am going to talk to you a little bit about financial literacy today. So before we get started on that, so when we think about money, let's think about it in personality types. So these are 5 different categories for the types of spenders or when it comes to money. So we have big spenders. So these are people who like to buy big purchases. They like to have nice cars or new technology or brand name clothing. And then we have the shoppers who can develop emotional satisfaction when they spend money. So that can be tied to, when you make a purchase and, you feel really good about it. It just makes you feel better. There's investors. So these are people who are aware of their money. They understand their financial situation that they're in, and they try to put their money to work. Debtors, these are people who don't really keep track of their money. They don't really know how much they're making, how much they're spending, and they're kind of just going about life spending away without keeping track of their money. And then we have the savers, which are the opposite of big spenders. They only shop for necessities. So they don't really make purchases that are going to make them feel good or purchases that, that they don't need. These are the people who really spend their money on, housing, on food, on necessary clothes. So I also wanted to state that not all of these, not everyone fits into one specific category. A lot of these categories can overlap. So then when we talk about money choices and spending, this is a generalization of, not generalization, but this is a way to think about how you spend your money. So when we break down in different categories, the things that we need to survive and the things that, we want to have. So I want you all to pay attention to this first one, this first category, pay yourself first. So when you're making money, whatever amount of money you make out of that paycheck, look at it from this perspective. So once you get paid, look at 10% of that income, whatever amount of money that is. You make $100. Look at that $10 and pay yourself. Put that into a savings account. Not everyone gives to charity. Not everyone is able to give to charity. So you might not have this category. This category might be different for you. You may not be paying for housing, or your housing may be more than 20% of your income. So this is just an idea of how you can spend your money. But of course, as you get older, as you continue, to make money and learn more about it, these categories will stay the same for the most part. They'll change a little bit, but the amount of money that you put into each category will change. So here is a budget. So this is a sample college budget, but it can really be applied to anyone's budget. So up top, we have the income. This is the amount of money that you all are making, the amount of money in your paycheck. So you put the total amount here. And once you have that total amount, pay yourself first. The money that you saved, the money that, you might have received as a gift, or money, maybe someone owed you money, they paid you back. Add that money into here. Money earned from your full-time or your part-time job, or money that you're making in other ways. Now here, oh no, here, you have your expenses, for food. These are things that are necessary. You need to buy food to survive. Toiletries, whether that's, toilet paper, toothbrush, toothpaste, things that, you need on a day-to-day basis. And then if you have a car, you might have a car payment, or you might have to pay for gas, for insurance, for repairs, and other categories that you have here, other expenses that you might not think of. So the purpose of this budget is to really be able to maximize your money. So going back to the top, initially when I first started talking, I was talking about this chart and how you can categorize your paycheck into these different kinds of categories, or put them into these different kinds of categories. Usually your housing is going to take the bulk of your paycheck, food, but depending on your circumstances, depending, if you're living with your parents, you might not be paying the same amount of rent, or you might not pay rent at all. Depending on how much food you're spending, what your lifestyle is, you will allocate a different amount of money to these different categories. So what I was talking about just now was the sample college budget. So here up top, you would put in the amount of money you're making, whether this is while you're still in school now, maybe you're working a part-time job. So these categories might be different for you. You might not, your students, you might not have a car. You don't have a car payment. You don't have to pay for gas. So, whatever, think of your lifestyle and how you can apply this budget to the things that you're already spending money on. If you have a part-time job or if you have an allowance, put that money up here, and then you can see as and anytime you spend money, you would add it to this category or that category, depending on what you're actually spending your money on. And then at the end of it, you put in the total amount of money that for your bills, utilities, your needs, your wants. And then you subtract it from the total number of your paycheck. You subtract it by your finances, and you should really have no money left. And I'm not saying that you should spend every single dollar, but really be thoughtful and allocate every single dollar towards something. Maybe you'll need it for other expenses. So if you feel like I didn't use as much, I didn't drive as much this week. Let me save those extra $25 or $30 into my savings account, or use that for a rainy day. Um, so let's talk about money management. So it's really important when you think about money and, thinking about the different financial institutions. For the most part, we live in a cashless society. I mean, not that it's totally cashless, but for the most part, not too many people use cash, and we need banks to manage our money. For the most part, nobody's really carrying around thousands of dollars or hundreds of dollars. For the most part, we put that money into these financial institutions, and these financial institutions can grant us different things or give us different things depending on the types of bank accounts that we have, types of credit cards. And then the credit cards come with interest. So interest is a fee received or paid for the use of money. So basically, when you get a credit card, the bank will tell you you have an APR of 14%. So APR is annual percentage rate. So the interest rate that you'll get on that credit card. Just so you all know, 14% and below on credit interest is great. Anything above 14% is a lot of money to pay back. So then there's different kinds of banks. There's an internet bank, which is a web-only bank. For example, there's Ally Bank and Axos Bank. So these aren't banks that you can physically walk into, like a Chase or a US Bank. These are banks that manage your money online. You have access to your money the way that you would with any other bank. You just can't physically walk into one and talk to a teller. And then, there's online banking, which, Wells Fargo, US Bank, they all have some form of online banking where you can have access to your money, you can transfer your money, you can make a payment online. And then, so these are the different kinds of banks. And then, what do you need to open up a bank account? If you don't already have a bank account, the first two things that they ask you for is a social security card and a government issued ID, whether that's a California license or ID or a passport of some sort, but some form of identification that the government issued you. So before you think about even opening an account, you want to ask the bank or ask the teller, is there a monthly service fee? So if you have less than a certain amount of money, you might be charged anywhere between $25 to $50 a month just to keep your money in that account. Do you require a deposit when I open my account? So sometimes for some checking accounts, or not checking, for some savings accounts, they will charge you money if you don't have a minimum of at least $300 in that account at all times. If at any time the account goes below $300, you'll have what's called overdraft fees. Or not just overdraft fees isn't technically for that, but let's say you make a big purchase and you spend more money than you have in your savings or your checkings account. What your bank does is they charge you overdraft fees. So they're already, so basically they're saying because you didn't have enough funds in your account when you made that purchase, we had to come in, save the day, and make sure that you were still able to buy that. And because we did that favor for you, we're going to charge you for it. So nothing is free. So you definitely do not want to get overdraft fees because it will cost you more money in the long run. What's next? Okay, so let's talk about savings, why you should have savings. So a lot of times having savings is a better option than trying to put something on a credit card. So let's say you have a credit card that has a $10,000 limit, and you decide to buy a new car with that credit card. If your APR is more than 14%, let's say it's 24%, you're going to end up paying more for that $10,000 car than you would had you bought it cash. And that's just an example, but something smaller is like if you save at least $10 of what you earn each month. For example, if you earn $200 a month, you save $20 each month. In a year, you could save $240. And I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but in the long run, it's $240 that you wouldn't have otherwise had you spent those $20 on food or entertainment or something else. So it's really a way to save money and save for a rainy day, because you never know what you're going to need that money for. You might want it to buy your first car, or you might need it for an emergency fund. Maybe you already have a car and the car breaks down, or maybe you have other expenses that you weren't planning for. Having the savings account will definitely help you stay afloat and not worry about money, when those emergencies come, because they will come. We don't know when, we don't know why, but we know that they happen, and it's better to be prepared for that than not. So let's talk about what is credit. So going back to that interest rate. So when you apply for a credit card, or when you apply for a mortgage loan to buy a house, or a loan to buy a house, or a loan to get a car, they look at your credit score or your credit report. And a credit report is basically a background check that they do on you, but in terms of finances. So it's a record of a person's financial information, including previous addresses, social security number, current and previous employers, estimated income, credit card accounts with amount owed, payment history, and loan information. So basically your credit report shows every single debt that you've acquired, debt that you've paid off, every address you've been in. So it's basically a background check on that financial institutions do on you to see whether or not you'll be able to pay that money back. And once you have that set up, you get a credit score. So it's a standardized measurement of the potential to repay a debt. So based on your credit score or your credit report, your credit score might be low, it might be high. So it's really a FICO score. So there are 5 things that financial institutions consider or look at when they give you this FICO score. So 10% of it is really new credit. So if you don't have credit cards established, or if you don't have credit established, it doesn't affect you too much. It's not as It's just they prefer to lend money to someone who has had credit for more years than not, just because when you're brand new, they don't really know you. You don't have a history yet. So you could be a great person to lend money to, or you could be someone who's not going to pay it back. So that's why it doesn't make up too much of your credit score, but it does have an impact. So the types of credits that you use. So when you take out credit, you want to make sure that it's something that you need. Don't take out credit for something that you want. Don't go to the Gap store, to H&M, or whatever other stores you like to go to, and take out their credit cards. Because let me tell you, those credit cards will not help your FICO score, but if you miss a payment, it will definitely affect it. It will bring your FICO score down if you do not make those payments on time. So that's one of the biggest things, your payment history. That makes up 35% of your FICO score. If you make your payments on time, you are more likely to have a better credit score than if you miss a payment. And also another thing, you want to make sure that you stay below the 30% of whatever credit you have. If you have a $3,000 credit limit, you don't want to spend more than $1,000, because after you spend more than $1,000, then that's seen as, oh, you're using more than 30% of your credit. Are you going to be able to pay that off? If you can pay that off immediately, or just pay most of it off to stay below 30%, you definitely want to do that because that will affect your credit. The more money you owe for a longer period of time, the lower your credit score will be. So just to give you an idea, this is what the score ranges look like. If you have a 720 to an 850, you have very good to excellent credit. Anyone will want to loan you money because you have a history of paying your money back, of paying your debts back. You know how to manage your money, and you are an ideal person, someone who, yes, Olu, feel free to unmute yourself. Can you hear me? Olu, you had a question. Feel free to unmute yourself. No, any other questions? Oh. Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Okay, so yeah, so fair to good credit, 660 to 719. It's good to be in that range, you know, but everyone wants to have excellent credit because the better your credit is, the more you'll be like, the more likely you'll be able to get loans for, you know, a mortgage, for a car, for whatever it is that you need. But just please keep in mind, credit is not free money. Credit is money that you need to pay back. And if you end up biting off more than you can chew, you're going to pay more than double, than triple the amount that you initially borrowed, because that's how credit works. So you don't want to fall into that trap. So how do you build a good credit history? How do you make sure that you get to that good or excellent credit? So again, choose a credit card carefully. Look for no annual fees or low interest rate. The lower the interest rate, the better it is for you, because that means that the less money you're paying off. So use a credit to build a payment history. Make sure that even if you're only spending, you know, if you only use that credit card for your cell phone bill, if your cell phone bill is, I don't know, like $60, $80 a month, you only use it for that. Make sure that you pay it on a monthly basis. Make sure that you pay it before the due date. And even though it's only, you know, $60 or $80 a month, that payment history is going to add up, and it's going to help you get to excellent credit. And also, don't charge more money than you can pay on it. If you know you can't pay back more than $100 on that credit card, don't go out and spend $300 a month. Don't go out and, because that money will add up. You think, oh, it's just $300 this month. It'll be another $200 not that month. It's only $500. Next thing you know, you're $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 in debt, and you don't know how to pay it off. You're not making enough money. How are you going to handle that? So make sure that you don't charge more on that credit card than you can spend. So here's an example. Let's say you charge a $1,000 cell phone on your credit card, and you only make the minimum payment. The minimum payment is, I don't know, maybe $25 or $50. So you end up paying $511 with 35 cents more in the span of 71 months than you would have if you had originally purchased that $1,000 in cash, or that phone for $1,000 in cash. Because now you paid over $500 for the same phone when you could have saved up that money and used that $500 for something else. So you definitely want to be careful on how you spend your money or how you use your credit. So are you a good credit risk? You know, think about that for yourself. Do you pay your bills on time? Have you ever missed any payments? How many credit cards do you have? Do you have student loans, car loans, a mortgage? Have you paid off a loan before? Are you maxed out? Are you near your credit limit? So think about these things. I know that, you know, for most of you students, you're like, I don't even have a bank account. Or maybe you do. Maybe you already have a credit card. Maybe you already have a debit card. And if you do, that's great. I hope you're using it wisely. But just make sure that when you do, if you aren't already, when you do go and apply for credit, look at your own credit history. Look at, you know, your payment history. Think of, you know, before you take on any debt, any kind of debt, you know, think of what is the monthly payment, what is the interest rate, and calculate how much is this going to cost me long term versus if I wait a little bit longer and, you know, pay and save money so I can pay it off in cash. However, there are instances where we just don't have the cash handy. We're not able to budget and save because emergencies happen. And that's totally fine. Sometimes you have to take out that loan, even though you know the interest rate is higher. That's okay. But the purpose of this is to really show you all how to prepare for that emergency before it comes to you. So just making sure that you have the that budget, you have savings, and you're able to that you're prepared when something does happen. So credit dings, what is going to affect your credit? Making late payments. So if you make a late payment, that late payment will come up on your credit history, and it takes a really long time for that to be removed. So let's say you're applying for a car loan and 6 months ago you forgot one payment. You forgot to make one payment. That one payment is going to affect your credit score. It's going to bring it down tremendously. So make sure that you schedule it, you add it to your calendar, you write it down, you do whatever you need to do to make sure that you pay your bills on time. Make sure that you don't exceed your credit limit. Again, you don't want to use more than 30% of your credit. If you have $3,000, you don't want to use more than $1,000 at a time. So you don't want to apply to credit frequently either. The more times that you apply, the more that people will see, or the more that financial institutions see that, oh, if you're trying to get a loan from here, a loan from there, a loan from everywhere, who are you prioritizing? Who are you actually going to pay? So that can be seen as a risk. Um, and it can also bring your credit score down if you apply to too many places, because every time they look at your credit report, they're opening it up and they're seeing like, oh, you've already applied here, you've already applied there. I don't know if I should lend you any money because I'm not sure if you're going to pay me if you already owe these 3 or 4 other financial institutions. And then having an account turned out to a collection agency. So sometimes your credit gets so bad you can't afford to pay it anymore, and you go to collections. So once you go to collections, it takes years to rebuild your credit. So you definitely do not want to get to that point. You want to make sure that you prepare for an emergency and don't wait for it to catch you unprepared, is all I'm saying. So money choices during a crisis, going back, being prepared for that emergency. So planning is key, and you'll have to adjust as necessary. So create a bare bone budget that includes your necessities, that's food, rent, your utilities. So, um, after this session, if your parents, students, you might not know how to do this quite yet, but just, students, use your allowance if you have one. Use the money you get from a part-time job and think of your lifestyle currently. Are there certain things that you buy that you don't necessarily need, aside from, after you pay your bills, after you pay your rent, after you put food on the table? How else are you spending your money? So going back to that budget, and making sure you account for every single dollar. And also, another thing, especially during the pandemic, you can call your service providers and ask them for assistance, whether that's on utilities, whether it's cell phone or internet bills. They are definitely helping folks out during this time. All you need to do is reach out and ask and see if they have a program. They see if they have something available for folks who are, experiencing the pandemic a lot harder than others. Also, try to reduce your debt. So if, let's say, you have extra money lying around, you didn't use that extra $30 to $50 in gas this month because you didn't really drive, use it to pay off some of that debt. Add it to your savings. And don't make big purchases if you don't need to. If you already have a TV and you just want to get a bigger and better TV because you're just tired of this one, think twice about it. Do I really need that? Where could this money be going? Do I have any outstanding debts? Is there something that I want to save for that I could allocate that money to? So definitely, educate yourself on, your lifestyle, and really sit down and look at your budget. And okay, if this is the amount of money that I'm making, then this is the amount of money that I'm making, this is the amount of money that I need to survive, and this is the amount of money that I have left over. How am I going to account for every single dollar? Where am I going to allocate this extra money, if you have any? So just really educating yourself on your wants versus your needs and how you can start to save if you aren't already doing so. And then we have a ton of resources on our website. So not sure, some of you came in a little bit later. So again, my name is Lizette and I work for Junior Achievement of Southern California, and we are a nonprofit organization that brings programs on financial literacy, workforce and career readiness, and entrepreneurship to students in kindergarten through 12th grade. So we have a ton of resources on our website, on for students to learn more about finances, for students to learn more about entrepreneurship, on things that they need to know to be ready for the career force. So if you have any questions about this, I'm happy to answer anything on, financial literacy, or, if you have any questions, you want more resources, feel free to unmute yourselves or add it to the chat. But thank you all so much for joining me during this session. I really appreciate your time. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. This is my email address, and I'm happy to answer any questions now. If you all have any, feel free to unmute yourself. No questions? Anything in the chat? No? Okay. Well, my contact information is there if you want to bring junior achievement to your school, if you want to learn more about our programs. Feel free to reach out. Thank you all so much for being a part of this session today, and I hope you learned something. And have a great rest of your Saturday, everyone.